That's definitely a lot heavier than the miter saw was. Welcome back to Bowers Creations. Actually, I should correct myself. I was the one absent last week. For that, I apologize. Unfortunately, I lost one of my brothers last week. It's been super hot out here in the garage, and in what free time I did have, I just didn't have what it took to get out here to make videos. So we're going to get back on it this week. I got a lot of projects I need to get knocked out, and that's going to start with this lawnmower right here. Let me get you set up on the tripod, and I'll show you what's going on. So I already have what I need to do this because I've done it 3 times. Funny story, I'm sure most of y'all could relate to. I had 2 good running lawnmowers just a few weeks ago, but my nephew, he needed a lawnmower, and I figured I could bless him, help him out, give him one of my lawnmowers. Then naturally mine breaks the very next week, and I've tore it apart 3 times. I replaced the carb and done a tune-up on it. Come to find out it was a magneto needed clean, so that was the second time I tore it apart. And I forgot to hook up the disconnect switch on it. So that's all we got to do real quick is pull this apart and put the disconnect switch on. And we could get this project out of here. And that's that. So let's snap this back together. Alright, let's try it out. Moment of truth. Oh great, it fired right up the other day without that disconnect hooked up. So let me dive into this and I'll get back to you. Alright, so what I discovered after replacing the carburetor, doing a full tune-up, cleaning the magneto, tearing into that a couple times, is my disconnect cable isn't pulling far enough to let the lawnmower start. I think how I'm going to remedy that is drill another hole a little higher. I've done this before. You just got to be careful and watch what you're doing. But we'll just drill another hole a little higher and it'll allow our cable to pull a little bit farther. Alright, take 2. I'd say that was a success. Let's get this thing out of here. Morning. It's a new day, and the next project on the list is going to be these blackberry bushes here. So those who don't know, blackberries have a 2-year cycle. They grow new canes their first year, then their second year, those canes are what produce the fruit. In the meantime, it's growing new canes for the next year. We only have about a 3-week window on harvesting our berries. We're probably not in the best climate for blackberries, but these do all right. So what I need to do here is cut back all this old growth. It's going to die anyways within the next couple weeks. That way we could expose the new stuff and start getting it trained. I'll get you set up on a tripod and I'll show you how I do that. So on this one, at least on this side, it's pretty much done. I'll be able to cut it all the way back as far as I can. We'll check the other side, see if there's any viable berries. I know this one over here, it's probably the one that's most likely to have some decent berries for another week or 2. So we'll be less aggressive with that one. But this one, we're just gonna hack it back. Kind of want to be careful when you're doing this because like I said, you got your new canes in there and they're already shooting branches, and you want to save those branches. You don't want to break them because that's what you're trying to train for next year. So what this rope is that I'm cutting out is how I trained my blackberries last year. It was the first year I ever tried to train my blackberries on a wire system. If you know about blackberries, it's the most common way to train them. We never tried that before until last year. We had just let them take over the pergola. But now we try to actually properly train them, and it gives us a little bit better results. And we'll get deeper into that here in just a second. Alright, I think this is the last of it. Luckily these are thornless, so keep that in mind. If these had thorns, I'd obviously have on gloves. Man, do I got a mess, but you see just how far back we cut that back. All this is our new growth, our new canes, that now we need to start training our branches. This year I used galvanized wire. The rope didn't work at all. It was an experiment. Try and fail, I guess. But basically I'm gonna use zip ties and start securing these branches that I can along the wire. The other ones will knit back so they don't grow wild. We let our canes grow about head height, and then I cut the top, and that's what stimulates the branches to start reaching out. And we'll get those zip tied up and we'll move on to the next project. This one over here by the fence has longer branches, so you can kind of see what I'm doing. If I got a branch that's just running along one of my wires or one of my supports, I just gently wrap a zip tie around it. You don't want these tight at all. But just enough to start kind of training your branches. Sometimes you're trying to work your branch over from a funny angle. You could just go ahead and gently bend it and add a second zip tie, and they'll get it shooting right down your wire. Any of these that are kind of just pointing off where you don't have support, I just nib the tip off, and they'll stop growing and put the growth more in these branches. Oh wow, I'm right in the sun, I can't look at you. Here, check out the garden. Look how much of that blackberry we cut back. All that was gonna die in a few months anyways. So now we've made room for the new growth for next year's harvest. We'll get all this loaded on the trailer so I could haul it off Saturday to the chipping site. And now we got another project done. We'll move on. It's a new day and I'm finally finding the time to work on the project I've been wanting to work on all week. So if you noticed, I got a hole in my workbench. That's where I used to have my radio alarm saw set up. If you watched my last video, the cabinet shop tour, you probably caught a glimpse of it there. It's set up nice, working good for him, so we're going to let him keep that saw. Whether we find a replacement or if he buys it from me, I'm not sure I want to put a radial arm saw back in my garage. I would like to have one in the future, but it just takes up so much space. I'll show you what it looked like before. So you can see here the countertop sticks out 5.5 inches past the normal table saw depth. And that's just to the tip of the blade. The blade would actually hang off the countertop and the radial arm saw stuck out another 4 or 5 inches. What that would lead to, if you're just trying to walk through here with the vehicle, you'd knock your shoulder. And there's been times I've backed into this corner and it made me scream pretty loud. I do have a 12-inch miter saw on a fold-out stand that would do 90% of what I ever have done in this garage before, versus having the bigger radial arm saw. However, I got two issues with it. The first one is I'm spoiled. I've had a saw set up over here for 12 years now, ready to go at a moment's notice, flip the switch, and I could cut up wood, no matter what I was doing. And to come in here and have to move the Jeep and the toolbox and drag the saw out, set it up, plug it in, that's a real motivational killer for me. I don't know what that does for you, but on a simple project, that just kills my motivation. The second issue I have is I want a measured fence stop. All the woodworking I do a lot of repetitive cuts. I want to be able to set my stop, make all my cuts, and you can't really set up a fence stop and a guide on a collapsible table. So moving the saw over here will solve both those issues, and I think I got another use for that stand that will solve an additional issue. I went ahead and pulled out the saw, I got it set up. I went ahead and unbolted it also, but there's two things I need to take care of first. The first one is we need to find out what our measurement is from here to here so we know what to do to the countertop. But the second one is anytime you're doing tooling setup, do it clean. This has been sitting for a while, there's dust all over it. And if you're going to be setting up tooling, you want it clean. For example, if you're changing this blade and a piece of dust or something gets between your blade and washer, that could cause you to have a wobbly blade. Same thing on your bump stops, things of that nature. If there's debris in the way when you're setting your bump stops and then it falls out or gets smashed, it's going to throw off your settings. So always work on your tooling clean. For example, if I was going to change this blade, I'd blow the saw off real well, pull off the blade and washers and all that, and then I'd blow off all the individual parts, making sure they're clean by feel, no rough edges or nothing, and then I'd reassemble it. And that will prevent you a lot of headache in the future. So we got it cleaned up pretty well, got it blowed off, and I'm going to use a square and I'm going to take measurements in numerous locations to determine the height I need to set up this saw. You don't ever want to take, if you're trying to set up tooling and trying to be precise, take numerous measurements. So I'm going to measure over here, over on this side. Make sure your square stays flat and take you several really good measurements. So I think I need to be about 3 9/16 inches from the top of my countertop to the top of my table over here. So let's see how we can set that up and we'll move it over there. So what I think I'm going to do is build a jig. Jigs sure make life easy. They take a little bit of time to set up. But what I did is found me some scrap particle board, and I'm going to use my square and measure off the surface of the saw and make micro adjustments on my table saw until I like my setting. Now personally, I would like the particle board to be just a shy touch taller than the saw. It's easier to shim up the saw to perfection versus aiming for perfection in the first place. So I'm going to make a little bit of adjustment here. You see I got a pretty large gap, and then we'll show you how I'm going to set up this jig. Once I found the exact measurement I wanted, I went ahead and cut me a couple rips out of this board, and you can see I used more of a Mr. Miyagi method to cut them to length. And now I'm just going to take and build a couple L brackets that we could set on the countertop to help space our top up. Alright, so I went ahead and used some brad nails and tacked the L brackets to the side of my cabinet here. And now I just need to loosen up this center section. Hopefully I didn't glue it years ago. And should be able to lift it up until it hits these. And then I could screw it right back in place without having to fiddle with it too much. Might have to get something to bang on that wheel. Alright, there we go. Let me find a few more screws. We'll get it screwed off. All the ones I pulled out were broke. We'll see how it looks. Alright, time for the moment of truth. And that is pretty dead-gum close. Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave the saw alone for now because we don't have the stuff to build the fence. And we don't want to bolt down the saw until we can align it all with the fence. However, I'm having another issue with motivation and when it comes to my equipment, and I think we could use this miter saw stand to solve another issue. Let me show you real quick what that is. Now this has been another major motivation killer, and that's going to be my planer. I used to have another little side table for my table saw that sat right here, and it made my throwout table wider, but it also housed my planer. Ever since I've been into the Jeeps, I kind of changed interest and downsized my woodworking stuff, but now my planer's kept in this table. And if you've ever handled one of the 13-inch DeWalt planers, you know they're pretty stout. And let me show you what it takes to get this planer out of this table here. So now that we got it out from under there, we still got to get it up on something we can work with it on. And I think our foldable stand's going to work for that. I did notice our bolt holes are landing in a horrible place, but we'll have to see what we could do to remedy that and see if we could get this bolted to that stand. It turns out I set the planer up here and it's going to bolt up just fine. So all I need to do is drill some holes and then we'll get it set up. That's definitely a lot heavier than the miter saw was. After an emergency trip to Home Depot to get some longer hardware, we got it all bolted down now, and I think this is actually going to work out pretty good for me. Instead of taking up space on my table saw when I'm using it, it has its own stand now, and I can roll it clear out in the driveway if I so choose. Another surprise feature that I didn't think was going to happen, the rollers are low enough, they clear the outfeed table on the planer, that we can still utilize them to help feed lumber and guide lumber out the backside of the planer. So between having this set up and having our miter saw set up, that really should make it a lot easier to get out here and do. Alright, I think we got a lot done at Bowers Creations this week. We got the lawnmower fixed. And I think we learned something about that. Next time you're troubleshooting your lawnmower, go ahead and disconnect the ground on the magneto. That'll eliminate the safety system, and that'll tell you if your problem's in the motor or part of the safety system like it was in my lawnmower. We also got the blackberries trimmed back. I showed you how I trained my blackberries. They're ready for next season. And we didn't get nothing built this week, but we got the garage ready for future projects, and we also got it cleaned up. I don't like to leave my garage dirty. I like to clean it up when I'm done with projects. Coming out here to Dirty Shop is another major motivation buster, and I hope this video will encourage you to get out to your shop, find what kills your motivation, and see if you can fix it. Until next week, I hope y'all have a good week. I want to thank all my subscribers, and we'll catch you next time.